Confession time. I played The Sims. I love The Sims. I've spent way too much money on The Sims in the many, many years I've enjoyed the game from back in 2002 when I first stumbled on The Sims 1. And I agree with the rest of Sim players that Sims 3 is the best iteration of the game that we've gotten so far. But I'm also a Dragon Age fan and a Mass Effect fan. Role playing games with compelling narratives where I get to envision and embody a character through which I would have that adventure and live that story are my art, blood, and soul. And so I was absolutely delighted at Wednesday's IGN article where it was revealed that Dragon Age the Veilguard drew some learnings and inspirations from The Sims. I was like, oh, neat. The possibilities of how that would go and how it would absolutely transform the gameplay is fantastic. I was excited. And after I read the article, I made a tweet about it and I took a nap. Woke up some hours later and saw that a lot of people absolutely hated the new information we were given, going on and on about how that should not have been mentioned and should never have been made public, talking about what was the point and bringing up claims that The Sims is going to ruin the Dragon Age experience. And then it hit me. A lot of y'all don't really know how The Sims game works, do you? Now, I am not a game developer or designer. I'm not about to go into details on the technicalities of systems progression and the mechanics that drive video games. That's not my expertise or specialty. And although I know we live in a time where people do like to act like they know everything, so they can shit on things with a full knowledge or understanding to people who don't know any better, I'm not about to walk that path. I am not a game developer or designer. That is not the perspective I'm bringing to this video. No, what I'm going to do is explain The Sims from a player's point of view and how I think the systems and mechanisms that have been put in place for the game help enhance The Sims gameplay and would be beneficial to Dragon Age the Veilguard as well. Because I know when people hear The Sims, a lot of them often chalk it up to dating simulator that goes on endlessly for all eternity and gets boring pretty fast. Which the game is more than that. Because you see, simplicity often hides the amount of work that has been put in to make something seem simple. The Sims, for all its seeming simplicity, is a pretty reactive game. And the reason why it's so reactive is because of the progression system upon which the game is built. One that goes so deep and considers so many permutations for every decision that the player character can possibly take. Which is what helps to make the world of The Sims feel as lived in as it possibly can. And it is when you play the game for a bit, for a while, when you settle fully into its world, that you get to see how truly reactive The Sims can be. For example, in all the Sims we've gotten so far, except for Sims 4, there is an NPC called the Burglar, which has been worked into the system to generate in your world after some time has passed. The burglar is programmed by the system to do different things and follow a certain script. They only show up when the Sims are asleep, so if you had a Sim party late into the night and not fall asleep until say 6 a.m. and so they are still sleeping at 2 p.m., the system is designed to indicate that the Sim is asleep and so the burglar can proceed to rob you. 2. Their primary objective is to steal from you, especially when the player has started making some decent cash and has started to splurge. And so they often nab the item with the highest value that you have in the house. It's intuitive, so if for example you just splurged on a new large screen TV that cost you almost 150,000 simoleons and the burglar shows up, best believe that the TV screen is going. The only way to prevent the sim from being boggled is to buy a burglar alarm, which the burglar always strips and which brings the police in time to nab him before he leaves. If your sim happens to wake up in the middle of the robbery and tries calling the police, they will not arrive early enough to catch the burglar, which is apt as hell and very fitting for police behavior in reality. And in The Sims 3, your sim characters can actually attempt to fight the burglar if they wake up in the middle of the robbery. If they win the fight, they get their item back. If they don't, the burglar knocks them out cold, and when they come to, they've been robbed blind. It's a series of little actions and steps that can have varying results depending on previous player choices, and all of this in an interaction with an NPC that is quite secondary to whatever story you're playing with your Sims. And the effect of the burglary is felt and reverberates, not just because your Sim now has to replace the stolen item if the theft was successful, but because now that act turns that incident into a trait your Sims would have, a memory and scar that pops up for them occasionally during your playthrough where they are actively terrified of being robbed again. And if the robbery fails and maybe your character does succeed in fighting off the burglar, there's a boost of confidence that follows them around from that success. And it's a boost that then affects all aspects of their lives, their jobs, their relationships, their hobbies. Anything that they would only go for if they are feeling confident is now on the table because they've progressed as characters from having a moderate amount of self-confidence to having a lot more, because of a series of events that were triggered by your sim making expensive purchases, moving to an expensive area, or being a college student living in a Greek house. Now, I could continue to talk on about The Sims, but we are here for Dragon Age the Veilguard and Corinne's IGN interview. And something that stuck with me, because I think she's so right and real for that, is when she points out that what's so wonderful about The Sims is there's so much autonomy in that game. And we find that RPG players are hungry for that same sense of autonomy, making decisions, influencing characters. And this part of the quote had me screaming because yes, that is what we want with RPGs. Like, sure, combat is great. Combat is fantastic. I love action RPGs and CRPGs. I love my RPGs in whatever form they can give them to me, because the combat is just part of my role playing. I also am just as invested in the decisions I get to take. How those decisions shape my character, what do they turn them into? Is their reaction to the changes my character is undergoing in the world of the game? Because I don't know about you, but personally, I find that it breaks my immersion if, for example, my character's decisions are not actively affecting their characterization and how they are perceived in their world. I want to see them grow and evolve through the story. I want to feel like my actions and decisions are actively shaping them so they feel unique to me. You can have two players recreate the exact same family in The Sims, but each player would mold and shape their own family in their own way and create family legacies that are vastly different from characters that all started together at ground zero. And if we can get even a smidgen of that in Dragon Age the Veilguard, like we get with The Sims, that is huge. It means that my plan to have at least 10 completely different playthroughs is possible, with each of them being vastly different from the previous one. That's a great upgrade to Dragon Age games, which, in my book, were already fantastic RPGs. The article states that Corinne's systems design background is evident throughout the Veilguard. It includes extensive skill trees with subclasses that are geared around different weapon types and styles of play, and the choices you make also resonate deeply throughout the story. And I am just so giddy at what that means, based off of the work she's done with The Sims, because this is huge, at least for me personally. because I believe it does contribute to the way this game will play. And as a Sims player, the possibilities make me so excited. For example, in The Sims, you can give your Sims the kleptomaniac trait, which grows and develops with them. They become better at it the further along you go. And in addition to the upgrades, you get the benefits. Because the progression system within The Sims means that for someone with the kleptomaniac trait, for example, should you decide to pursue the criminal career path, you get a leg up compared to everyone else. Because the system recognizes that your particular path should have you skipping several steps ahead and gaining more than others because of a trait you've chosen, which works to get you ahead in your career. It is very intuitive. And I see how that was brought into the Veilguard, for example, with regards the factions and classes. We have been told that certain factions do work well with certain classes because the factions give you benefits that are inherent to the group, which would in turn give you the leg up you need for your particular class, should that be how you choose to play. So my Rook, who I've already talked about in my 5 reasons Veilguard should have a polyamorous option video, is going to be a Lord of Fortune. And she's going to be a two-handed weapon wielder because not only did the warrior gameplay convince me that I need her swinging and wrecking shit, but knowing that her Slayer specialization would be helped further by her Lords of Fortune faction, which would work her a bit higher up in skill point acquisition, makes me very happy. And also makes me see how, for example, that bit of systems design that was brought in from The Sims into the Veilguard in a way that syncs well would work for the game. I'm a damn happy camper. In Corinne's own words, she says, and what you might not realize in The Sims is behind the scenes, there are some really robust progression systems, game economics, characters' behavior for their own AI and autonomy, a lot of really fascinating parallels. And I was gaping at that part of the interview because if there's anything every single Sims player can agree on, it's that The Sims is annoying with its autonomy, but in a good way, if you like that. Because here is the thing. The Sims fans know that what keeps us coming back to this lifestyle social simulator game is partly because we get to play God, yes. And we get to create amazing characters with extensive character creator that just lets us have free reign in imagining what these characters would look like, walk like, sound like, etc., with their stories and lives. Something else that is being brought into the Veilguard, which thank the gods. But it's not just that in The Sims. We get to play God. It's also because we get to create these characters and just watch them live and interact with others. And sometimes, even you, the person who is made this character a certain way to exist in the world, can be surprised by the differing path your characters and those who interact with them choose. Especially if you're someone like me who likes to play multiple households at the same time. Which means that for extensive periods of time, I can go days, weeks without controlling or checking on the other households. Maybe because I'm trying to look after one family to get their children from infancy all the way to them starting elementary school. And then I come back to my other family and it hits me that their lives continued without me. Because now one of them is pregnant. The high schooler has dropped out of school. My straight A's college student has decided to sell drugs on the side. And I'm looking at them like, bitch, I left you alone for 2 seconds. 2 seconds. What is this? That's the world of The Sims for you. and how the system has programmed the game to run. This means that when the developers talk about the companions being able to explore the world and do their own thing, pursue their own romances, follow up on their own concerns and interests, and I now know that they took on inspiration and learnings and collaborative efforts with the team that worked on The Sims, that the Veilguard's game director worked on The Sims, it fills me with hope. Because that is what The Sims does best. Turning the world into a playground and unleashing the Sims to become fully realized characters, going whichever way they want, doing what they want, until you then come back to take control, and the transfer of that is seamless. And yet, you know that these are their own people, they have their own personhood, which for me always elevates the story that is being told. It makes it believable for me. It's like we've given Bellara, the bookworm, an adventurer trait. So of course her ass isn't sitting in the lighthouse waiting for us when we are not with her. She's gone on to discover new things and have a blast. It's like Nev being on the detective track at work. It makes sense that she takes off investigating. She's got work and clients, and if we see her in the world, she might stop us a bit to pick our brains on something she's working on and needs a fresh pair of eyes to look at. And we would see the reverberations of the decisions and actions that our companions have taken without us out in the world. That is real. That feels good, looks good, sounds fantastic. It really is the little thing that helps make a world feel lived in for me. It's not just a group of people that fill every corner and just have conversations. Like, that is good. I like ambient conversations. I like them because my ass is nosy and I can be quite the gossip with my friends. So that is good. But I also want more. I want the world to feel a bit real. And if the team is bringing the systems design that is inspired by something like The Sims, I consider it a win. Even the statement that characters bear long-lasting scars depending on the choices you make made me smile and made me think of the Snowy Escape expansion pack for The Sims 4, where your Sims can get injured while skiing and aren't able to do certain interactions that involve physical activity because they are hurt and in pain. I think that is so cool. And just bringing in a little bit of that, not the entirety, but just a little bit of that, would absolutely make my day. Of course, it also means that my poor darling Harding, what if her hurt is beyond just the scars on her face? What if her body was injured too? What if moving for her for those first couple of days after whatever event happened is hard and painful? Harding! I can't believe our Rook would make choices that would lead to whatever happens to her, my baby girl. And even with all these conversations, there's the part that makes me squeal. Because Bush says, so in that regard, I'm very grateful to my time there, being able to take some of those learnings, whether it's about how to convey romantic progression to the player or design skill progression, game pacing, a lot of really interesting transferable ideas that you might not think about on the surface. And I am still stuck on romantic progression because if you play The Sims, and this has become a recurring statement of mine in this video, I am sorry, but this is a collision of two games I love for two very different reasons, and this girl's brain is doing the happy dance. But as I was saying, if you play The Sims, the relationship progression is a thing of beauty in how believable it actually is and how it adds to the story because it's not rushed. And I enjoyed Baldur's Gate 3. I love that game. But I was also like, Shadowheart, my darling, my heart. You went from being neutral to telling me that hearing from me makes you happy pretty quickly. Why is that? I know we all want different things from romances in games, and that is fine. This girl, however, loves romances that build. Gone are the days of me chatting with Thane and 1 minute we're talking about his memories of his dead wife, and the next thing I'm hitting on him because when a man is in his feelings, that's the best time to strike. Like, that was a weird relationship start for me. And so knowing that the team was inspired by The Sims makes me happy, because then it feels like we can get more of a build of a relationship that isn't just answer a couple of questions, do some things together, and now we bang and I am now forever in love with you. These relationships, whether they're romantic or platonic, if they are drawing their inspiration from The Sims, will build slowly. We'll start off as strangers, become acquainted with each other, then we can work slowly our way to friendships or enemies if you want. Some might become an arch nemesis, some might become very good friends or best friends. And if it is a romantic interest, we can see the romance slowly build. But the thing I love about The Sims romance progression is that the relationships feel real time. They can devolve. Like in reality, if you stay out of touch with old friends, don't communicate with them or check in on them, or if you're not doing anything to maintain your romance, you can actively have that romance turn a bit cold. And so The Sims reminds you that these are actual people. Well, pixelated people, but you get the gist. The Sims progression system reminds you that these are people, and these relationships are ones that you want to put in the effort to cultivate, build, and maintain. Because you can lose them from inattention, from losing sight of how you built those relationships in the first place. And I think that ups the stakes of things in a way that I personally find very satisfying. Because if there's something I can't stand in RPG relationships, it's when you've built these relationships with the characters and then that value just stays stagnant. And I'm over here like, why are you breaking my immersion? This doesn't make any sense. I've not spoken to Garrus in months. Why are we picking up from where we left off? Like nothing's changed and everything is hunky-dory. It should be miffed at me, or a bit distant, or a bit cold and distant. That is role-playing. So yes, I am personally excited about the content of the article, but I think the editor didn't do it any favors at all, because if it had been framed better, I think the reception would have been better as well. For example, Dragon Age the Veilguard's progression system would be more reactive thanks to Dragon Age's inspiration from The Sims. Something like that. But then again, a title like that would not have gotten people to click, like the one they went with, I guess. And IGN loves their weird editors that feel more conversations in their tweet comments than it does clicks. So let me know, did I provide some clarity with regards why this talk about The Sims inspiration makes me even more excited for the game? Or are you still team The Sims can bring nothing of value to Dragon Age the Veilguard? Let me know in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and what I had to say. Hit the dislike button if you didn't. The algorithmic system of YouTube likes it either way. Share this video please if you can. It does help bring new people to my channel who might enjoy my videos, which does help my channel grow and is incredibly supportive of my content. Speaking of support, a huge thank you to my patrons who help me keep the lights on and to whom I am immensely grateful. Thank you. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, the link to do so is in the description box. I make new videos 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Whilst you wait for new content from me, do check out my Who's the Better Necromancer between Dorian and Emmerich video if you haven't seen it yet. Until next time, do remember, obsessing over the things you love? Perfectly valid coping mechanism.